What's up, everybody? Andrew with NQS Performance Outdoors here, coming to you from the basement workshop again today. I've got all kinds of good stuff going on down here. I've got one rod on the wrapper, I've got a rod on the dryer behind me, and then I've got two other rods where I've just glued the handles up, so I'm waiting on that to dry. But today, this video is going to be a continuation of pouring soft plastics. After one of my last videos, I got a request from Joe. He was looking for how to make Senko videos. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. However, I'm going to take this video one step further. I'm actually going to show you how to produce two different baits out of that same Senko mold. So give me just a minute here. We'll head over to the worm pouring station and we'll get started with those worms. Alright, you can see I've got everything we're going to need to make these worms here today. I've got it laid out on the table and I'm just going to give you a quick rundown of everything that you see here. First and foremost, you're going to need your plastisol. Today I'm going to be pouring with the Essential Series plastisol from Do It. It makes a pretty decent worm. It's not my favorite plastic to use. I did buy a gallon of it though, so I'm going to use it up. My biggest complaint about it is honestly it smokes a little more and it smells a little stronger than some of the other plastisols I've used, but it does produce a good bait and it's relatively inexpensive. What I would recommend for you guys plastisol wise is maybe buy a quart at a time until you settle on one that you really like. I've got a scissors, some safety glasses for my eyes. Again, you guys, we're going to heat this plastisol up to about 340 degrees, so we want to be safe when we do that. I've got some worm oil in this container, some bait bags back here, a heat-resistant glove. I've got my softener, and then I've got a syringe that we're going to measure the softener with. I've got a big container of salt. That's a gallon of salt. I bought this when I first started. I had no idea how much salt a gallon was going to be. I have a feeling it's going to last the rest of my life, but it's not super expensive, so no real loss there. I've got two different color glitters right here. I've got my colorant. I've got my mold. This is the Gary Yamamoto Senko 5-inch from the Do It Essential series. This is a relatively inexpensive mold. You guys, you can pick this up for like 42 bucks on their website, but it is a quality mold and it is actually licensed by Gary Yamamoto, so it does meet the standard of the Senko. I've got a clamp here. I've got my injector. You guys, this is a medium. That should do everything you need to do for what we're going to do today. The large one holds 9 ounces of plastic, I believe. That's pretty large. So this is sufficient. The medium is the one I would recommend you go with when you're first starting out. And then back here, I've just got a bucket of water. That's going to come into play a little later on in the video, but we'll show you that later. I'm going to go ahead and get this camera repositioned on my head, and we're going to shoot these worms, and we'll go from there. Alright, so I've kicked this camera over to my head. My furnace is running in the background. If you look out the window there, you can see it's about 30 degrees and snowing here today. So the furnace is going to kick on and off. I apologize for the background noise, you guys, but the first thing we're going to want to do is just give this plastic a good shake. It's been sitting for a while. It does have a tendency to want to separate, so you want to make sure you just give it a good stir before you pour it. Today we're going to measure out about 8 ounces of plastisol. Pretty close. Alright, the first thing we're going to do, you guys, is we're going to add our softener while the plastic is still cool. Softener is something you got to just kind of come up with your own formula on. You got to be a little bit careful though, you guys. If you put too much softener in, your baits are going to be real sticky and they're never going to quite harden all the way, and they're just going to kind of fall apart on you too when you stick a hook into them. I like to use about 3 cc's in a cup, and that's just under a teaspoon. If you're going to measure with a teaspoon, you can probably get away with up to a teaspoon in the regular formula. Again, just don't put too much softener into your plastic or you're going to run into problems later with it. We're going to give this a really good stir, you guys. Mix this really thoroughly. You want to make sure that it gets evenly distributed throughout the plastisol before you heat it for your best result. Once you feel good about that, we'll get this plastisol popped into the microwave and we'll get it heating and we will continue the process. Alright, we're going to get this plastic going in the microwave, you guys. I'm not going to make you sit here through the whole process. I'm going to pull it out about maybe every minute and a half, and I'm going to give it a good stir, you guys. I like to make sure my plastic gets heated really evenly when I do this, and as it gets closer to being ready, I'll give you a look at it so you can kind of see what you're looking for in terms of what the plastisol, the stages that it's going to go through while you're heating it. Okay, here we are 1 minute into the heating process, and you can see there's no visible change to the product yet. That's just pretty normal. Some microwaves are going to do this much faster than others too, by the way. Mine's relatively low powered, so it takes a little longer. If you have a high powered microwave, this process will go much faster. Okay, here we are at the 2 minute mark, you guys. You can start to see this plastic is not so milky anymore, and you're starting to get some clarity, and it's starting to actually thicken up. So we're making some good progress here. We're going to pop that back in after we give it a good stir, and we'll check on it in another minute, see where we're at. Okay, here we are 3 minutes into the process. You can see this is starting to turn clear. We're going to give this a really good stir. It's still a little thick yet. That's completely normal, you guys. This is just the normal stage that the plastisol goes through during the heating process. The big key here is just to keep stirring it, make sure you're heating it nice and evenly. So we're getting pretty close to ready. I'm going to go ahead and add my colorant. Like I said, we're going to do Junebug today. We'll give that a good shake just to make sure that it's not settled to the bottom. This is not the X2 colorant, this is the standard, so we're going to go ahead and give it about 10 or 12 drops. And we'll go ahead and stir that around. That's really close to being ready to pour, you guys. What we're looking for is the consistency of hot maple syrup when we pour this plastic. What I'm going to do quick is I'm going to add a little bit of blue and green flake to this. No real scientific method here, you guys, just kind of eyeball it. And we'll throw some green in there for good measure. Give this a good quick stir. We're going to pop this back in the microwave, maybe 15 seconds, and then alright, that looks pretty good. We're going to go ahead and shoot this. Guys, you're going to notice I didn't put any salt into this plastic just yet. And there's a good reason for that, and that's where the water is going to come into play later. We're going to suck this plastic up into our injector. Come over to the mold. I clamped it off camera. Slow, steady pressure when you shoot the mold, you guys. You'll feel it when it's full. Go ahead and give it a good 3 count with firm, steady pressure. After it's full, that's going to prevent any air bubbles from appearing into your plastic. And then we're going to back the injector out just a little bit. And you want to top that sprue off. Really important that you do that, guys. What happens as the plastic cools, it contracts. And it'll suck down into the mold. We'll purge the rest of that plastic back out. But if you don't top that sprue off, you guys, it's going to contract down into the mold. And you can wind up with an incomplete pour, or you'll have some air bubbles at the back end of your bait. So that's something you want to look out for. Make sure you top that sprue off every time. We'll let this cool for a few seconds, and then we'll go ahead and we'll demold this, and I'll show you why I didn't put any salt into this bait. This bait should be just about ready to demold. I don't know if you can see that here on camera, but this is why we topped the sprue off. You can see that it actually contracted down in a little ways. Had I not done that, we would probably have an inch or two of vacant space in the sprue, and that's when you run the risk of having incomplete baits. So again, it's really important, you guys. I'm just going to grab my scissors here. I'll cut some of this excess right off. And again, you guys, I want to talk to you about why I did not put salt into the mixture right away. And that's because we're going to make two different baits out of this Senko mold today, like I said in the intro. These are going to be really good Ned rigging worms. If any of you guys have done any Ned rigging, you know that it's really critical for that bait to stand right up on its head and have that tail not flop over on you. And if you have salt in the bait, you lose the buoyancy. So I'll show you what happens here. You can see we got a pretty nice translucent June bug there. Demold these, pull those off the sprue. And when I'm going to go ahead and Ned rig, you guys, I like to take the bottom of the bait. It's a little thinner at the tip. I cut off about 3 inches. And right there I've got a perfect little Ned rig bait. But here's the important part. This is why I didn't put salt. I'm going to put it in my bucket of water. You'll see that that plastic is buoyant. And you'll see the difference. You see it starting to stand up on its end actually. And I'll show you the difference when I put salt into the mix when we make the Senkos of what happens with that as well. Give me just a couple of minutes here. I'm going to get that plastic reheated and we're going to add some salt to it, and then we're going to actually pour some Senko. I reheated that plastic off camera. We're just about ready to pour here. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to add our salt. I'm going to give it a good probably 2 caps, maybe a cap and a half full of salt. We're going to give this a good stir, you guys. One thing you're going to notice too, don't be alarmed if you do start adding salt into your plastics. It is going to change your color a little bit. Generally speaking, the more salt you add to your bait, the less translucent it becomes. The baits will become a little more opaque. That's completely normal, you guys. I know there are some people out there that use like a glass bead instead of salt to add weight. That helps keep your color a little more true. I haven't taken that step yet. I think the salt is just fine. But we'll pop this back in the microwave for just a couple of seconds, and we'll get ready to shoot these Senkos, and you can kind of see the difference when we demold these. Purge the injector of any air that it might have in it. We'll suck up a bunch of this plastic. We'll come back over to the mold, clamp that up off camera. Again, slow, steady pressure. You'll hear it and you'll be able to feel it when it's full. We'll go ahead and keep our steady pressure on that for a good 2 or 3 count. Lift up. Again, you guys, this is really important. I can't stress this enough. Top off your sprue. This is just going to ensure that you get a complete pour. And we'll go ahead and we'll purge the rest of that plastic out of there. We're going to let this cool off camera, you guys. When I come back, we'll demold this, and I'll take it over the water, and I will show you the difference of what happens once we go ahead and we add salt to that bait. Alright, you guys, this bait should be plenty cool. We'll go ahead and demold this. Nice shot, no air bubbles there. And you can kind of see, I don't know how well it's showing up here on camera, but this bait is not nearly as translucent as the other one that did not have the salt on it. We'll get these pulled off of there. Still relatively translucent, but not as much as the other bait. And you can, the more colorant you add, you guys, the more opaque your baits are going to be as well. So we'll throw this one in the water, and I'll give you guys a look and see what happens here. And you can see those sink to the bottom. No signs of the tails floating back up. Get that back in the center there. But again, the more salt you add, you guys, the faster it's going to fall. Be careful if you put too much salt in, the baits just kind of fall apart. They get real crumbly. But again, you can see the difference. I'll throw the Ned rig tails in there. And you can see how the tips of those are buoyant and they want to float back up to the surface. That one's standing perfectly vertical at the moment. So that's the difference. Why I didn't put salt in for the Ned rig, you guys. But again, we got 2 baits out of 1 mold, so that's a pretty good deal. All right, Joe, there you have it. That's how I utilize my Senko mold to produce 2 different worms. Hopefully that helps you out, Joe. Send me a DM. I'll go ahead and I'll mail out the baits. It's just a couple that I poured here in the video today, but you can give them a shot for yourself, see how you like them. Everybody, hopefully this helps you out, clarify some things about making Senkos and Ned rig worms. If you like what you saw here today, go ahead and give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. When you do subscribe, be sure to hit the bell so you get notified when we send up new videos. Thanks again for watching, everybody. I truly appreciate it. See you next time on NQS Performance Outdoors.